Former Vice President Joe Biden reversing his stance on the controversial Hyde Amendment. Here's Biden last night, so take a listen.
For many years as U.S. Senator, I've supported the Hyde Amendment like many others have, because there was sufficient monies and circumstances where women were able to exercise that right. If I believe health care is a right, as I do, I can no longer support an amendment that makes that right dependent on someone's zip code.
All right, so I want to bring in our Deputy Political Director, Mary Alice Parks, in our D.C. Bureau to help us understand. Mary Alice, first, I just want you to remind people of what the Hyde Amendment is and who it actually affects.
The Hyde Amendment is long-standing policy. It actually dates back to the 1970s. It basically bans any federal funding for abortions. Now, it really impacts women on Medicaid. That's government-funded health insurance. And so, in turn, it disproportionately impacts women of color and poor communities.
So I guess everyone is curious what prompted Biden to actually change his mind.
Right. Biden talked about a struggle last night. He described an educational journey for him. It is always really interesting to me to listen to a politician talk about changing their mind. I guess that's a sort of generous way of saying it. Others this morning are calling it a pretty big flip-flop. And I think that this is an example of him being pushed from the left in his party. There are progressives and women's rights activists in this country that are saying there's no middle ground for them on this issue. And he says that he's had a change of heart.
I feel like there's no mercy when a person decides that they're going to change his mind. What's the public perception of a candidate changing their stance mid-course?
Right, it's never a good look. And this is going to be tricky for Joe Biden because he's actually written extensively in the past about this issue. He's a Catholic Democrat, and he's written about how he believes on principle that taxpayers who don't believe in abortions shouldn't fund abortions for those who are seeking them. So he has a long history as a politician, as we know, and the fact that he's written on this issue, talked about this issue, voted one way for so long makes it look like he's shifting in his values. Now, I think he might be able to make a case that right now, today, access to abortion is harder and facing more restrictions than it has in the last 3 decades since he's been in office. And he talked about that a little bit last night, that this is a unique moment where access to abortion has been really restricted, especially in red states and in rural parts of the country.
Well, Mary Alice, I guess the question is more of the race to come, but can he bounce back from this?
Probably. Joe Biden is still really loved, and it does speak to his willingness and eagerness to pitch himself as a centrist candidate. He wants to be seen as the guy who's looking for compromise, who's willing to work across the aisle. But it's the ever-ending tug of war in a primary race where you have to first win over other Democrats, but hopefully in his case, he'd like to not go too far to the left, that it changes what he sees are his odds at reaching across the aisle in a general election.
And Mary Alice, you have the latest polling on abortion.
Yeah, this was really interesting to me. There was a new NPR Marist poll out just this morning that reaffirmed what we know, which is that access to abortion is incredibly popular across the country. By leaps and bounds, 3 out of 4 Americans really don't want to see any change to abortion access. Even more, you see there, 77% want Roe v. Wade to be upheld. But I was struck by the fact that a lot of Americans are willing to engage on a conversation about limitations to abortion. 61% of respondents in this poll said that they think that some limitations make sense, whether that's based on trimesters, how late in a pregnancy a woman can have an abortion, whether there should be limitations of whether an abortion is only allowed when later in a pregnancy, if the health of the mother or the viability of the fetus is in question. And those numbers of the nuance of abortion opinion really plays in Joe Biden's favor. He's trying to say this is actually a more complicated issue, and maybe there's room for compromise.
All right, Mary Alice Parks in our D.C. Bureau, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.